Welcome to the Smith Publicity All Things Book Marketing Podcast, offering tips, insights, and advice from the best in the publishing industry. Hello, and welcome to this episode of All Things Book Marketing. I'm your host, Olivia McCoy, and my special guest today is Amy Edelman, the founder of IndieReader. Hi, Amy.
Hey, hi, how are you?
I'm so good. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. So I always start by having our guests tell us a little bit more about what you do and how you help authors over at IndieReader.
Okay, well, I was first a traditionally published author, and I had self-published something like way back in the day before Amazon as well. So I had kind of the unique position of seeing both sides, the strengths and weaknesses. And then about 15 years ago, I saw a story on the cover of Time magazine and also in the New York Times talking about how self-published authors were kind of coming into their own. And I thought that I would like to create something that kind of gave them like more equal footing in the world of book publishing. So I was working in PR at the time, but kind of started IndieReader as a side hustle. And, 15 years later, we're still here. So, and joined by a lot of other companies. So it's been very exciting and rewarding too. Yeah.
That's so cool. I love to see those organizations that just kind of start as an idea and then grow into something so much bigger. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's been fun.
Let's define indie author for our listeners because we've talked about it before, but there tends to be a couple different definitions for indie author depending on who you ask. So what are you defining as an indie author?
Well, we say small press, hybrid, and self-published. We consider to be indie authors. So yeah, that's where we are with that in terms of who we offer the services to and who needs our help.
And why does the playing field need leveling? What are some of the differences between being a traditionally published author and being an independent author?
Well, I have to say it's changed a lot in 15 years. Originally, when I started IndieReader, it was with the idea of making it a consumer reaching site, kind of like Pitchfork was for music and indie films, that kind of thing. So when we started, there was like church and state, a distinct separation. There was definitely a stigma attached to being indie, not so much, I guess, for, hybrid didn't really exist back then. So I think more for small press authors. But I really don't think there's much of a stigma anymore. I mean, when it comes down to a lot of these authors, especially the romance authors, I'm putting together right now are best-selling indie books that I pulled basically from USA Today and Amazon. They sell tons of books. So a lot of them have their own publishing companies. So, and what we found when we started trying to reach the consumer is readers don't care who publishes their books. I mean, I think it was a lost opportunity for traditional publishers to kind of define their space. Nobody looks at the side of the book to see who published it.
And what do you think contributed to that change in stigma? Because I do remember a time when saying that you are a self-published author meant that you weren't successful or that you didn't make it as an author, as a traditional author. But that's not the case that I'm seeing as a publishing professional and as a reader, an avid reader. So what do you think contributed to that change in perspective?
I think it was a couple things. I think it was indie authors realizing that they needed to have a book that had a great cover, that was well edited, and that, basically gave you the same thing that a reader would get from a traditionally published book. I think that's part of it. I think, again, that it's treated the same, in the whole ecosystem of publishing. I mean, I don't think there's the separation. Certainly, Amazon helped with that. Not that I love to give a shout out to Amazon, but certainly with the Kindle and their Create Space services, they really helped a lot with that. I remember again back in the day that the New York Times had a very strict policy of not including self-published books on their bestseller list. But lo and behold, one kept like surfacing. It was like, oh my God, we didn't realize it was self-published. So I kind of think that they snuck in through the back door in a way. So yeah, I don't even remember your question, but I think I addressed what it was.
No, that's a great answer. And now we're seeing like USA Today, their new bestseller list when they came back is actually more in support of indie authors. They opened it up and made it more accessible. They even partnered with an independent bookstore to
Yes.
ideally make it easier for those independent authors to rank because they're focused more on those sales numbers as opposed to kind of the editorial side of those bestseller lists. So that's been a huge change just even in the past few years. And we have an episode coming up right after your episode airs with bookshop.org.
Oh, I love
So
bookshop.org. Yeah, we when we post our reviews, we include links both to Amazon because some people are only included on Amazon and bookshop.org. Yeah, we love them.
love bookshop.org. So everyone keep an eye out for that one as well, because we're going to focus on the indie author and the indie author landscape in this episode. But in the next one, we'll focus on independent bookstores and distribution. So tell us what the benefits of indie publishing are. Why would someone consider indie publishing over going the traditional path?
Um, the answer that we get from most authors is control. They're able to control what they want, their vision from start to finish, which is a really great thing. I remember when I published I think it was my second book, Manless in Montclair, and I walked into the meeting because back then you actually like saw people face to face, and they were what I thought they were showing us the proposed book cover, but that wasn't the case. It was like, this is the book cover, and the buyer at Barnes and Noble loves it, which is basically, I guess, and like I looked at my agent, she looked at me, and I was like, I don't really like that book cover. And I assumed that they were going to show me like 5 different book covers, and they didn't. So, that's what we went with. If you're self-published, you get to make those choices. One of the interesting things, though, and one of the things that I'm privy to because I've done both, is that in the minds of self-publishers, the thing that they really need that they're going to get from a traditional publisher is marketing and PR support, which, not really. I mean, even when I published my last book, traditionally published, which was in 2007, so that's like going back a ways, they still, you need a platform. They have a certain number of people who are going to help you for a certain amount of time, and you're still scrambling. The author still needs to scramble. So for all of the viewers and listeners that are thinking, oh, I'm going to get so much support from the publisher, and that's why I want to traditionally publish, you really don't. So, in some ways, the being able to control it all and having to handle it all is a good thing. For some people, that's like really a good thing. For others, not so much. And you do need a certain amount of money, I guess, to hire the right people to help you. But there are a lot of resources out there now that can help you find people, for what you can afford to do. But yeah, I would say control is pretty much the number one thing, just wanting to see their vision through from start to finish.
I do think one of the biggest misconceptions about becoming an author is that if you write the book and you publish it, you're an author, and that's all you have to do is write the book. but actually you have to be a marketer and a promoter and a publicist. Even if you hire a marketer and a publicist,
Mhm.
there's still so much you have to do as the author,
Mhm.
regardless of the publishing path you choose. I mean, a lot of my job here at Smith Publicity is consulting with authors on how to increase their branding and their brand awareness and post about it on socials and build a target audience of readers and a network to connect to, build up your newsletter, write a blog, all of these different things
Oh,
that
like I'm just
I
listening
know,
to you.
right?
I'm like
I
overwhelmed.
know.
And
It's so much.
it is, but I have to say too that being traditionally published, just like being indie or self-published, neither one is a guarantee to success. I mean, with both my books, I I had amazing coverage, up to and including the Today Show both times. Both books did okay, the Little Black Dress got tons and like everywhere. But the publisher published it like during the summer. It like wasn't a beach book, or I think it was that, or they didn't publish enough and they had demand over Christmas and then they had to resend the book. So you're dealing with things that are out of your control either way. And so to me, it's like timing, and it's basically, there are other things in play that will either make your book a runaway success or not. I mean, look at 50 Shades of Grey, again, 1,000 years ago. It was published by a very small publishing house. I didn't read it just because I didn't, no judgment. But it wasn't what I've heard, like especially well written, but it was huge. It was huge. It just so happened to be huge. And a lot of that they attribute to the fact that Kindles were like getting popular then. And so you didn't have to like show everybody on the subway you were reading this, erotica or whatever. So there were a lot of things that made that book or those books such a runaway success. So whether you're traditionally published or self-published, a lot of it depends on things that are out of the author's control.
Well, and 50 Shades is also an interesting case study because it started as a fan fiction online.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
So it wasn't
exactly.
even a book first. It was
Right.
just fun stories that people were connecting with, and then it took off. So it was just the right timing. Like you said, timing was a big part of it. Luck was a big part of it, but also knowing what the audience wanted.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you talked about how the playing field needs a little bit less leveling nowadays and how stigma is disappearing rapidly. But what are some of the struggles that still exist for being an indie author? And I imagine there are struggles for any publishing pathway, but what are some of the things you see indie authors needing more support with?
Again, it's kind of emphasizing the credibility. I mean, when we started again 14, 15 years ago, we were really surprised at how good some of the books were. I mean, the whole perception that a self-published book like isn't as good as a traditionally published book. Again, that's kind of fading because the main thing is that people aren't dividing them into buckets. This one is this one is that. So I think if it's a traditionally published book, generally you're going to get book reviews more easily. But a lot of those places that generally did book reviews, a lot of newspapers don't have those sections anymore. I mean, I don't have to tell you on the PR end, there's like a lot of outlets that have kind of disappeared for that. So we provide pro book reviews. We work with, people who have the background and the credentials and the clips and all of that. And so, but then it is again up to the author, which it would for a traditionally published author too, I guess, to take that review and get it into it to places where it kind of emphasizes the credibility that it's a good book. I mean, we do what we can on our end, but everything we do is just kind of a step towards building what they need to build to get their book out there. So we kind of help provide the building blocks, and from there it's up to the author to use it in the way they can to raise their profile.
Let's dive into the rabbit hole of book reviews. I love
Okay.
talking about book reviews.
Okay.
Why are they so important for authors?
Again, it's just a way to get credibility. It's, I mean, we say, and we're tough but fair. You know, we're honest. I know that we were one of the first. I think we were the second to offer professional book reviews to indie authors. There are many outlets out there that say they're going to do book reviews, but they're always good book reviews. They don't, that they're, I mean, we are never mean, but we're honest. But saying that too, like, everything is subjective. Everybody has we don't assign the book reviews. The reviewers look at the list that we have and choose from there. We encourage people not to choose a genre that they're not interested in, but still everything is subjective. So but book reviews are important because you're getting somebody else's take, another reader's, an informed reader's take with a professional book review of your work. Some people are very open to that, and some people less so. We don't do developmental reviews, but there is often information in there where if the book is, not in paper format yet, if they want to go in and change things, it gives them the opportunity to be able to do that. And then if it's good, a lot of people pull out an excerpt to use on their book cover. It's like anything else. If somebody else is reading it and they like it, you're more inclined to do the same.
I got to tell you, I love an honest review. And that's what I always encourage authors to ask for an honest feedback in the form of review, ask for honest reviews rather than, we often put it in this kind of black and white. Is it a positive review or a negative review? But honestly, I want that honest review because it is going to help you weed out who your audience isn't. So if you have a book, let's say it's a romance book, and that's going to appeal to some, that's going to not appeal to others, and you want those reviews to help kind of decide who's who so that you don't have to. And ultimately, that's going to lead to more positive reviews, more positive, not entirely, for a book because you're reaching the right people. So I'm glad to see people giving those honest feedbacks and recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's incredibly important. Awesome. So what can readers do? What can authors do? What can publishing professionals do to support indie authors? What are some of the ways that we can be a part of the industry?
You got to be more specific with the question.
Okay, let's ask, what can readers do to support indie authors?
Well, as I said, I think readers, I know for me, when I always need to have at least one book going, and the worst time is when I finish a book and then I need to find a new one. I think be open to the whole ecosystem of published books. And again, a lot of people are still buying from Amazon, or even when you go into your independent bookstore, although I have to say, there's a lot of education that needs to be done with regards to setting terms so your book can be carried by a bookstore. It needs to be returnable. This is stuff that Amazon doesn't allow you to do when you have a book published by them, which is why we suggest going where you can set your terms. So it needs to be returnable, available at a 40 to 55% discount. But when we talk to authors, we one of the first questions we ask them, this is back when we were doing publishing, which we're not really doing, publishing services, which we're not really doing anymore, is what is your what's the best outcome? Why are you publishing a book? Are you publishing it because to give to your friends and family? Is it like a memoir just for like closer relatives, or you want to see it on the New York Times or USA Today bestseller list? So part of that determines like which path we say to take. If it's only for a smaller group of people, you can do it so the terms don't necessarily have to be what a bookstore, a brick and mortar bookstore requires. So back to your original question, if whether it's in a bookstore or on Amazon, nobody divides books between self-published or indie and traditional. So just be open to new authors who you might not have heard of. Maybe look in places that you normally wouldn't look at. But again, it's like I said, I'm putting the list together now, going through USA Today, and a lot of these authors are return authors. They're on our list every week, so it's not like they're unfamiliar. And a lot of them are published by hybrid presses or smaller presses, so it's not even like you would know if you weren't in the industry which was indie and which isn't. So
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, Amy, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Why don't you tell us how our listeners and watchers can get in touch and learn more about you and IndieReader?
Great. Well, the IndieReader site is Indie, INDIE, Reader, READER.com. We have lots of other services available for indie authors. We also have a book reviews page. Peruse the book reviews page if you see something you like. There's retail outlets, bookshop.org, in addition to Amazon. So yeah, it's a great way to find something new. I mean, one of our catchphrases in the beginning is read what you like, because traditional publishers, it's kind of like the same stuff over and over. It's the same things that are showing up on the best book lists and that kind of thing. We kind of offer a selection of books beyond that. So
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today.
thank you. Take care.
Awesome. And listeners, watchers, if you like this episode, don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with anyone else that might be interested. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Smith Publicity All Things Book Marketing Podcast. To reach us and learn about our many services, visit smithpublicity.com or send us an email to info@smithpublicity.com.